How are you?
Good. I'm very happy to have electricity for the first time in 3 days. We had this huge ice storm here in Portland, Oregon, and it they said it was a historic event, and it took down the entire Portland metro electrical grid.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, so many of us have been without power for several days now, but it came on this morning, so it's like that classic song. You don't know how does it go? You don't know what you've lost till it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. Oh man.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And
So
electricity, it's a simple thing we take for granted.
you were out for 3 days? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, luckily I'm a filmmaker, right? So I've got these giant cinematic batteries that will keep devices charged usually for several days. The one thing I did realize though was that laptops, we don't have laptops yet that can be charged on a giant USB power bank. We have iPads and mobile devices that can, but I think that's the next step, right? Once we can get laptops to be low power consumption devices, and we can just kind of keep them charged wherever we are. I think that's going to be a big breakthrough.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you ask
So
me, that's the next. I think power is something we really need to innovate in. We're not quite there yet. I mean, we've got some level of battery power, but it's just not there yet. I mean, I did the same thing. I did so last year I bought like a super thin, super light laptop that had a really, really long battery life. And the problem is it was so underpowered that it just was terrible. I couldn't get any work done. So I ended up buying like a massive gaming laptop to do work on. And now this thing's got an hour charge at tops. So it's like really need to innovate in the power space.
yeah, it's kind of a funny it's a funny dilemma because if you're out of power, and we at the first day we were out of power, the temperature went down to like 25 degrees, right? So very quickly the house got extremely cold, and I was joking to my son, who has this big gaming laptop, that we should fire that sucker up and heat up his room. Of course,
I know
it
it gets
sort of
work for me too.
it sort of works, except for you have to know that it without it being plugged in, it'll die in an hour. So
I know it
right,
doesn't. It doesn't work
that's
very long, unfortunately.
yeah. There's the rub.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what you're passionate about.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, just thank you so much for inviting me onto your Think Future podcast. We love your podcast, and
Oh,
we love
thanks.
listening to my business partner and myself both love listening to your interviews with your various guests, and their projections of what technology has in store for all of us. Um, yeah. So my background is I've been around long enough to have many different backgrounds, which I hope lend to my creative thinking abilities. Um, I have
That's
a
what we need.
background in.
Diverse, crazy backgrounds all funnel into like an amazing, creative, innovative personality, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of like the Elon Musk scenario, right? He's got,
Yeah.
a diverse amount of interests. And I mean, that's what the world is, right? I mean, we have, it's kind of funny because there's a sort of serendipity of many different fields all colliding, right? To create, like, for instance, the mobile device, right? That's many different technologies into one device. Um, and so we don't want to, we kind of, I think the careers that we set forth to us, these career paths for our children, are sort of preconceptions of sort of old, outdated ideas, right? So to be truly innovative, it's like you kind of have to be open-minded enough to know the various fields that exist now, and try to sort of create some new hybrids to sort of a bridge to a new field that we can't even imagine at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So my background, I'm actually a fine artist. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I went to the LA County High School for the Arts, and we're talking like mid '80s here, and then I became a
You don't look
muralist.
it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm about to turn 50 in a couple months, so
No way.
yeah,
Possible.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, but So I being in Los Angeles at that high school, one of my teachers was this guy named Kent Twitchell. And Kent Twitchell, I have to give him credit. He is a very famous muralist in Los Angeles. He does all these hyper realistic, giant 10-story figures of various famous artists and actors and musicians. And they look very ominous. They're always usually along a skyscraper or a very large building that's right against the freeway, right? So it looks like one of the characters is literally going to reach out from the building and grab several cars and help with LA traffic. So
not distracting at all.
In high school, I became his apprentice, and I learned this technique that he had developed, where what he would do is he would take multiple exposures of a person, a model, right? So he would take from a very long exposure to a very short exposure, right? And what that would do is it would give you a very dark photograph that was the highlight of your nose, right? And then it would give you, there would be 10 or 20 or 30 photographs on the other end of that. And on the other end of that would be a very white photograph with just the black of your ear, right? So what he would do is then he would take all those photographs and he would overlay them and trace them. And he would end up creating a topographical map of a 3D model of the person he was photographing. And then he would paint by numbers, right? As simple as that. And the process I found was fascinating. One, because I had never seen anyone do this before. And two, because what it did was it revealed to me that there was actually this hyper realistic world that existed that I was being educated in. This is pre-computers, right? So he was doing this with slide film, projecting it on a wall and tracing it with a pencil. And what it did was it opened my mind to this thing called what we call now HDR, high dynamic range imaging. And what he was doing was he was capturing the details in the darkest darks and the details in the lightest lights and fusing all those images together. So I went to art school. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and I got really into taking his techniques and applying it to the new things that I was learning. And one of those new things I was learning was putting a camera on a ball head and doing what we all do nowadays, which is just take multiple overlapping photographs and creating a panorama, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, what happens if we take his technique and combine it with a panorama? Well, then we have this HDR, high dynamic range panoramic imaging, right? Oh, and so, technology evolves. Fast forward, I've had many careers between those points in time. But fast forward to the 2005, and I'm the webmaster at a school in Hollywood called the Noman School of Visual Effects. Mm-hmm. And it's this incredible place. It's like ILM for college kids, right?
Wow.
I mean, you can go there and you can learn all the visual effect, all the wonderful, fantastic things that we.
Oh man, I love the sound of that. That sounds so cool.
And so I met these professors there. One guy was Eric Hansen, another guy was Greg Downing, and they were just doing the most innovative things that I could imagine. And what they were doing are things that now we take for granted, right? So they were doing early forms of 360 video. They were doing early forms of spherical imagery, which you would use that to project as a backplate for a 3D model for a set, right? It's all stuff that we're all very familiar with now. But they exposed me to a world that I'll just say there was a point in my life where they invited me to be part of this program called the Yosemite Extreme Imaging Project. And what it was they had hired students from various colleges and really amazing people at Microsoft and Google and all these other tech companies who are like very talented panoramic photographers in their own right. And we canvassed the Yosemite Valley for 3 days. And there was a company called Gigapixel Systems. And Gigapixel Systems came out of the Carnegie Mellon imaging project, which helped, if your listeners are familiar with this, helped develop the imaging camera for the original Mars rover that had a very low megapixel camera, and they said, how are we going to figure out how we're going to create like a hyper resolution image of Mars? And so what they did was they came up with a program that basically shot, tens of thousands of images overlapping, and they stitched it together to be a larger image, right? Just like we see with Google Earth satellite imagery. And so they made a consumer version of this camera called the Gigapan Systems. And what that allowed you to do is basically take it to a vantage point, a human vantage point, and capture this hyper resolution image that you could zoom into. Ooh. Now, what they did was they took it a step further, and they had 20 teams. If you're familiar with Yosemite Valley, it's basically a giant bowl, right? Mm-hmm. And what they did was they had 20 teams set up these camera systems all around the entirety of Yosemite, right? And with walkie-talkies, and we all hiked up to the specific spots. We said 1, 2, 3, go, and we shot the entirety of the valley simultaneously, while a low elevation plane did a digital elevation scan of the topography of Yosemite.
Oh man!
So we had an accurate render of Yosemite of that moment in time, and then we had multiple hyper resolution panoramas. And what Greg Downing and Eric Hansen did was they took that topology, they unwrapped it, right? So it turned from a bowl to a valley, and then they projected our gigapixel panoramic images onto that topology. So for the first time ever, you could have a God's eye point of view where you could see the entirety of the valley simultaneously, and you could zoom in and see the backpack of a mountain climber that was all the way on the other side of the valley.
Oh my God!
And
fantastic!
And it was that moment in time that I think my eyes were truly opened to sort of like the full potential and possibility of what these new camera systems and these sort of new modalities of image capture offered artists, and not just the programmers and technical people, but artists as well. So that was sort of the impetus to forming my company Panogs, which was working with other organizations to try to find places where these in-depth image capture systems could be optimally used, right? And so I got back in touch with Gigapan Systems, and what's interesting now is my co-founder of Panogs, that's the company that I co-founded and the director of innovation for. He was the former director at Gigapan Systems. Mm-hmm. And the reason we became friends was he had reached out to me because he said, after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, New York was being rebuilt, and Time magazine was getting together to prepare this huge, it was going to be their first trifold cover ever in the history of Time magazine. And what they wanted to do was something that had never been done before, which was they wanted to climb to the One World Trade Center spire before it opened to the public. And they wanted to put one of these gigapixel cameras out about 12 feet from the top of the spire. And they wanted to create a selfie of the One World Trade Center building, but then of all of New York as the background. So it'd be a fully spherical capture. And, we had to, and there was so many challenges because, the technical of mounting a jib that was safe, that had to be, taken all the way to the spire.
That's crazy.
And the technical ability of changing focus on the building and then shooting all of New York and combining all that together. And so they reached out to me and they said, we know you've worked on Yosemite, we need consultation and we need you to stitch it. Anyway, long story short, it was a huge success. And you can zoom into New York City and see the Statue of Liberty from super close up, even though you were, so far away. And you get this vantage that's never been seen before. And Mike and I said, this is the best. We just want to do this for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And that's how the company was formed.
Fantastic.
So that was a long-winded answer to your question there.
So how long ago was that? That was a while back though, right?
Yes, that the time cover came out in 2013. And then we formed the company in 2014. I think I have my dates right. I might be off by like 6 months or so on the Time magazine cover. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. The next folks that reached out to us was the Space Needle, and they've actually become one of our biggest clients. And they wanted their own Space Needle selfie. But the way they approached it was, if you think about the business model of the Space Needle, really they sell tickets, elevator. They sell you a ticket to an elevator ride, right?
Yeah.
And then what you get is what's on the observation deck. So, with weather in Seattle, you don't always get a wonderful view from the top of the Space Needle. And so they said, what can you guys offer us? We had this wonderful meeting with our CEO, and I just remember it so vividly that he said, here's a whiteboard. I want you to give me your 30 best ideas. And from that meeting, I think we did 26 of those ideas.
Wow.
Implemented and they were just
no filter.
Yeah, they were off the rail. What is your wildest? What's your wild? They were the best kind of client, right? Because they just
love it.
There's a budget.
That only comes along once in a lifetime.
Oh, I know. We were pinching ourselves on the drive home because it's a 3-hour drive back to Portland from Seattle, yeah. And lots of time to reflect on those road trips. And so let's see. Just off the top of my head, we gave them a hyper resolution, fully spherical gigapixel panorama, and for folks that don't know what that looks like, what it is the final result. We worked with this wonderful company down in San Francisco called Stimulant, and we've done a lot of projects with them since then. And what they worked with us on is building out the touchscreen interface. And so you go up to the top of the Space Needle, and there's these giant, basically, they're like iPads on steroids, right? And what you can do is, or like what Microsoft Surface displays wanted to be, right? And what you can do is, there's all sorts of really fun interactive overlays, but it's like one of them is famous in Seattle, right? So and you can zoom in and see where Bruce Lee's studio was, and zoom in and see where Bill Gates lives, and zoom in and see where Miles Davis played, and and then one of them's for Seattleites only, and so you can do all these fun overlays, and you can zoom in and see and recognize people that are miles away. I mean, it's just there's this miraculous, there's something miraculous about, it sort of reignites what I think our passion in photography probably was in the 1800s, right? Where they were like, oh my God, you captured a moment in time. It's like frozen. Right now, we all take this all for granted, right? But when you capture an entire city frozen in time during that one moment, there's something really strange to say, this guy was right here walking his dogs along the river, and 10 miles away over here was this woman loading groceries into her car, and this guy was this funny street performer over here, and you can get this snapshot of a moment in time for the entire city. And then we said, my God, there's like a historical context to this that's really fascinating, like that you can historically document this moment in time. And there's so much information on this image that it would take years just to analyze this one image and pull out all the data from that. And so what we did was the next project, because of that historical inspiration, we proposed putting a panoramic camera system, mounting it permanently to the top of the Space Needle, and we'd call it the 50-year camera. And what it would do is it would shoot a high resolution panorama every 5 minutes. Wow. For 50 years. And so we installed that in 2000.
That speaks to the futurist in me, man. I love the sound of that.
Yeah. So what's really, so this is really crazy is it started running, I think it was in 2015, we had it up and running, and it's waterproof. They say it's lightning proof. It's not actually lightning proof. It's had to get replaced a couple times because of lightning strikes, but we captured, I think we have about 6-7 years of panoramic data now
Oh man.
of the Space Needle. And what that looks like when you're on the Space Needle is this giant touchscreen display, right? And we all know how fascinated we are with time travel movies, right? So we love Back to the Future movies. We love any kind of time travel movies. We just can't get enough of them, it seems, right? This is a time travel turntable, like a DJ would spin.
Oh,
and you can
interface. I love that.
You can spin it time backwards and watch this weather change in Seattle. You can spin it forwards, to your moment in time, to the present. And then what they do is they go through and they capture epic weather events, right? So there's all these moments. Like I've got this image behind me is from the same camera we mounted here in Portland on top of the coin tower. And so you can see we captured a double rainbow. And what's amazing is that, as photographers, you can't always be out there shooting all the time. If you capture something like this, like a weather phenomena, you consider yourself lucky. But these cameras, if they're shooting all the time, you wouldn't believe how many rainbows they capture.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can select these highlighted moments, and some of them are like this epic fog bank that rolled into Seattle. That shut down the city, but you've got all the spires rising up through the fog, and then you've got the sunrise lighting up the spires from an elevation that
like super high resolution surround you, so you can actually look around and see it from any angle and zoom into any portion of it.
Exactly. So, okay, that leads to, and I could go on. There's more. We've done more. Touchscreen projects with the Space Needle, but I'll try to connect the dots here. So around that time, Samsung released this thing called the Gear VR, and this was the early VR days, right? And so what it was, you had to own a Samsung phone, encourage Samsung sales, and you'd click it into this sort of VR camera body, right? And we had an early developer kit. And we took it up to the Space Needle, and we had a 5-minute meeting with the CEO and his whole team, his development team, and that's all they could give us was 5 minutes because they're busy, important people, right? That meeting ended up being 2.5 hours long. They canceled all the other meetings.
No way you can squeeze all of that experience into 5 minutes. Come on.
He started. Well, what happened was we took all this panoramic imagery we had already shot for the Space Needle, and we the time-lapse imagery and the gigapixel from the top of the roof, we down-resed it so it could fit into a Samsung Gear VR, and then we put it in there. So when you put the VR headset, you had to hold on to the desk. The CEO actually had grabbed the desk and was like, "Oh my God," because he didn't want to fall. He thought he was going to fall. And it immediately was like, it was the same, just like I had that experience in Yosemite when I did that project. You have these aha moments in your life, and they don't come that often, right? You probably had it when you first touched an iPhone, and you felt that sort of like being able to pinch things and zoom and having that tactile. That was something that forever changed you, and you can never go back and relive that. That we have to have some new form of technology that brings us that new type of aha moment. And the CEO was just, okay, what can we do? What can we do with this? Because this is, he could immediately see the possibilities. So we started doing crazy things. So we developed a Space Needle app. It was called the Space Needle VR app. And we were like, what crazy things can we do? So, we mounted a 360 VR camera. We created a jib, like the one we created for the One World Trade Center. And we put it on the end of a pontoon, this pontoon, right, on the seaplane, the flotational parts of the seaplane, right on the end. And then we took off from Lake Union, and then we buzzed the Space Needle. We flew around the Space Needle, and we did. We have what I'd love to talk to you about too is a company we work with called the VR Drones. They're Aerial Technologies International, and we developed new kinds of drones, right? So we had a special drone that had a VR camera both on the top and the bottom of the camera, and we launched it right from the base of the Space Needle, right in the lawn, and went straight up. and
Oh.
circled the observation deck. And back then we called it the Superman jump, or the superhero jump, because it gives you this like sort of like your stomach drops when you experience in VR. And we did one where we created a robotic mount, and we had it on the special stabilizer, and we walked on the outer halo of the Space Needle, and then we held the camera out past the halo, so you had a first person view of what it's like to walk on that Saturn ring that surrounds the exterior of that. So anyway, so we had all these experiences, and we just kept on developing VR experiences for several years for them. So we did one where we created a special system. We have these really wonderful mechanical engineers that work at our company, that we give them these crazy ideas, and they say, no, that can't be done. And then 10 days later, they're like, I think we figured out a way to do this.
All you got to do is plant the kernel, right? You plant the seed of an idea, and they're like, no. They start off with, I don't know. And then like, it just sits there, and just, because you're creative folks and they're problem solvers, they go like, how can we make this happen? Because you just
exactly
idea and it happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was some firsts. We did some firsts. So, I mean, dropping. So the Space Needle is roughly, if I have my memory, it's about almost 700 feet tall, or you're right, 700 feet tall.
Yeah.
And from the halo, it's about 530 feet. And so to drop a heavy 10-pound camera, panoramic camera, as your listeners probably know, I mean, objects, when you start to, they accelerate first, and they get enough inertia. And so if you don't have a motor that actually slows down the descent, the force it compounds to the point where it will just rip off the cord at the end. And then usually the cord would rip off, and there would be havoc and chaos. Mm-hmm. So we had to come up with a camera system that
would be awesome though.
It would, but it would be like a marlin reel, right? It would accelerate like you're bungee jumping, but then simulate the effect of a bungee cord, where it stretches, it slows down. But then we also had the technical challenge of, you can't put a panoramic camera on the end of a cord without it spinning so much that it doesn't matter how much post-production software you can't correct for all that. So we had to create we had this amazing guy in Canada, this really famous engineer up there, create a single axis stabilizer so that the motor above it could spin, but the camera would be perfectly still as it fell.
Oh, fantastic.
So, and that was the VR bungee jump experience. So, that was one of many. And then we've since worked with another sister company called Mixed Reality in Seattle, and created a 3D version of that. And what it does is you take an app, and it takes a picture of you, and then you have the virtual reality bungee jump in the gift shop, and then you can social post that out to, like, I bungee jumped the Space Needle, and it's got a little avatar. It's got the guy in the bungee jump suit, but it's got your face on it. And so, we started going around down those routes with the Space Needle, where, they wanted this, the zoomable selfie, they called it. And so we had to work with these. They were basically missile tracking camera systems that we installed. We installed one up on Kelly Park in Queens Hill, I think it's called. I don't know Seattle as well as I should. It's Queens Landing or Queens something. Mm-hmm. But it's this beautiful neighborhood that's about 2 miles away from the Space Needle. And we installed it on top of this building. And what it does is it's a live video feed. And so you go out into the Space Needle, and you press a button, and then you're just asked to hold still and smile out into the distance, and that's it. And then suddenly you get this video of the zoomable selfie. So it's this beautiful view of Space Needle, right? Of Seattle and the Bay and the Space Needle. And then suddenly you're zooming in really fast to the Space Needle, and suddenly you're zooming, and oh my God, that's you. And then there you are, waving, right? So, and I mean, I don't want to spend this whole podcast on all the projects we've done for the Space they helped sort of fuel and the seeds for all the different other technologies that we do at Panogs, which have led to some really.
You're still a startup, right? You're still pretty small, even though you've been around for what, 7 or 8 years now.
Yeah, we were founded in 2014, so yeah, so we've been around for a short period of time, but enough to see, sort of VR 2.0, right? Because this is the second wave of VR. It had an initial excitement, right? We had the Nokia building $30,000 cameras, and I think the Jaunt VR was also around that that price tag. And there was all this investment in VR, and then it started to kind of plateau and then sort of die down. And then now we've got the Oculus from Facebook, and we've also got this pandemic. And the resurgence in it sort of like, it was like the lifeline that VR needed.
Yeah.
Because, people couldn't be convinced that this whole virtual meeting thing could be legitimate, or that you could virtually be in a virtual space and not get motion sickness. People are all naysayers until it's a necessity. Mm-hmm. And so, so they helped us seed all sorts of things. I mean, we've got, mother is what do they call it? Necessity is the mother of all invention. And so, they gave us a lot of necessities on our plate, so to speak, and helped us, pull in specialists. We had to, we couldn't always solve these problems alone. We had to, I have to give a lot of credit to a lot of specialists that we had to bring in to figure out some really amazing solutions to some really cool projects. So,
I mean, did you ever have any trouble? I mean, your product is so cool. It seems like it would sell itself, right? Did you have any issues or challenges in like getting people to pick up what you're putting out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge that we still face today, which is distribution. So, Panogs is if you wanted to kind of whittle it down to what we do, is we're a production company that focuses on immersive media, and the immersive media is created using cutting edge and innovative technologies. Stuff that's just coming out, and so the challenges that we face are, distribution platforms, right? So I mean. Distribution of the devices that people would actually watch these experiences on, right?
You gotta have the device, the end device that they.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't.
Absolutely.
You can't just pick up an iPhone and just slap it on there and get the same kind of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so in a former life, I worked down in your neck of the woods. I worked at Yahoo for a decade.
No way. I was at Yahoo too.
Oh, no way. I was in the ad creative technology group, which was
2009. Here's my mug.
Oh, nice. Well, you and we overlapped then. You might have, I don't know if you ever were you there when, 2009. So were you there? You weren't there when Marissa Myers took over then?
No, just before that.
Okay. So there,
it was Terry and Carol.
Yes. I've hung out with them on many sales conferences, so I remember them well. So Marissa, she did these things called I'm gonna space on the name, but it was every Friday she'd get it'd be an all hands. She took this from Google, and she'd get together
Friday too, so it was
you remember. So she'd fly up various Yahoo employees or famous speakers to speak at Yahoo. And so my team was we were the team that kind of brought virtual reality to Yahoo, in conjunction with a Yahoo team in London and a Yahoo team and the Flickr team. And so we started creating these in the ad creative technology group. We started creating, like, how do you fund these things, right? How do you get it to pay for itself? So we created some really fun ads for JetBlue, where it was using the idea that it was one of those clip-on VR, those little clip-on VR glasses were a thing. They look like little spectacles.
Yeah.
So we had these Yahoo branded spectacles, and then the cardboard VR headset. And so you'd be watching Yahoo, and then it would pop up a JetBlue ad. It was like, if you have a VR headset, slide your phone into the VR headset and take a relaxing trip to a beautiful destination, all sorts of marketing thing. And we did another one, which was for Campbell's Soup, where you're in this kitchen and, you can click on, all different recipes and kind of,
Well, it's amazing to say that because, even the low resolution stuff, because, when Google Cardboard came out, I'm like, oh, that's not going to work. That sucks. Yeah. Right? But I tried it and it's like, it's not too bad. I mean, you still get some of the, like there was a Discovery Channel thing where you were VRing over a chasm and you still felt a little bit of that dizziness when you were walking over it. So I think that the human mind can fill in those gaps if the resolution isn't that low. But if you up the resolution to the levels that you're at, it's like, you're there. You're absolutely there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the resolution on these devices has gotten so good in such a short period of time. I have to thank, I mean, I know he gets a lot of slack, but I have to thank Mark Zuckerberg for helping keep VR alive during a time when it was really kind of losing steam and losing inertia. I mean, we've got developer kits of these guys. These are $290 now. I mean, these things, $290. It's less than a used cell phone, and you get immersive cinema and gaming, and you can watch.
I might just pick one of those up. I didn't realize they were that cheap for less than $300, man.
And they're virtually 8K, so they're super high resolution. And to your point, I mean, the technology has come so far. The post-production tools. There's Boris FX makes some amazing post-production tools for VR, and so does this company called SGO, Mystica VR. And you can post-process and stabilize 360 video, stereoscopic 360 video to the point now where there's no more motion sickness. So we've effectively solved that issue. And and there's people there's a company making these are just incredible. These are called Pimax headsets.
I think I saw those way back in 2015 at CES or something like that.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, and they're still going strong. They have 8K plus device now, but what's most amazing is it's got an extreme field of view, so it actually goes all the way to your peripheral vision.
That is one of the things that I've always had a problem with.
And you don't have the tunnel. You don't have the tunnel vision. So I swear, these headsets, when I'm wearing these, you can forget that you're in VR when you're wearing these. Yep. I mean, it's that good. It's gotten that good that quickly. So, our company right now, I mean,
$1,000, right? No,
that one's only, I mean, they're all going down in price now. I mean, I think it's probably $500 now. I mean, everything's cheaper than an iPhone now. So, I mean,
iPhone's going up.
Yeah. I mean, I know what's really interesting too is that I just saw on LinkedIn that that Apple's actually got job calls out for 90 VR and XR specialists, hiring immediately. So if any of your listeners have a
soon, right? I don't know if you've seen some of the artist renditions of Apple Glass, but they look terrible.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, they're good at keeping their surprises, but I mean, there's been a lot of talk in the industry of, will Apple ever get into VR? And I think that the answer is, unequivocally yes. We are definitely we're there, and I think they were waiting, right? They were waiting to see if Facebook's Oculus if it fell on its face or not, and it's not. I mean, they're selling out. You can't even, the Oculus Quest 2 is often sold out on Amazon.
Yeah, I wouldn't call Amazon. I wouldn't call Apple. I almost just said Amazon. I wouldn't call Apple an innovator anymore. They're kind of like a laggard follower. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they know how to commercialize stuff. As soon as Apple gets into the game, it's common enough, or it's commercial enough to turn into something that will just churn out the cash, right? Yeah. They might have been really, really innovative with the iPhone, but after that point, it's like they're kind of like gliding. And when we see an Apple, AR, VR, mixed reality headset, it's going to be so perfectly commercial
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's one for everybody. And you know, I can't imagine what that's going to look like. It's got to look like a regular pair of glasses. It has to, right? Otherwise, I don't know how it's going to fit into people's lives.
Yeah. I think we're already getting to the point where people are becoming more accustomed to being used to seeing objects on people's faces with the pandemic, right? With the masks. So I think I think, you know, just moving it up a little bit higher, I think people are going to have an easier time accepting
I think if you can make them look like a big pair of sunglasses, then you're all set.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know those like really giant designer sunglasses you can get? Like I have a pair of Versace sunglasses that are just enormous. You know, you could just like, if you look like that, then you're good.
Maybe they could maybe they could design it after in the next generation. You know, LaForge has those.
Jordy's hair clip.
Jordy's, the giant hair clip. There you go. I think that's the way to go.
Well, this is but it was like, so I mean, where are you at right now? So you are still building these experiences. You're building for VR. You're building for AR. What kind of mixed reality stuff are you doing? It seems to me that this is more pure VR that you're doing.
Yeah. So, well, it all kind of overlaps, right? I mean, so, I'd love to talk about the cinematic VR films that we've made, but I think what I'd like to say is there's a convergence point, right? So all these technologies are converging. So I think that what we traditionally have thought as AR is now kind of being moved to this like term of XR, right? So it's sort of like a mixed bag of everything. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing right now in the XR space is basically there's a couple of things. There's historical data. Right. So imagine being able to set up cameras that are taking time-lapse 360 images, right? And then you can visit that place later and another time and say, show me this place right here on this spot historically last year or the year before that, or the year before that. And in the Yosemite project alone, that project was done for the geologist at Yosemite, and he was actually able to figure out when the next big rockfall event was going to occur by comparing new imagery to recent or imagery that was shot a few years prior. And so with XR, what we're doing is we're trying to think of like this is what we've always done as a company, is what are the people not thinking of? Where are the gaps? What have we not heard of? And so we try not to get too involved with, like, if you get on LinkedIn and you spend an hour on LinkedIn and you look at XR and VR, you're often seeing a lot of people that are entering this industry very late in the game, and they're throwing a lot of buzzwords in because they want to be part of the party. They don't want to miss out on the party. Right. And that's not going to get them innovation. That's going to get them sort of mimicking what's already on the marketplace. So, we're thinking of, what's really interesting with, there's so many places I could go off in, so many tangents I can go into in our conversation here tonight. We've got some stuff I can't really go into too much detail about, but it's, there's panoramic imagery, time-lapse historical panoramic imagery can also be fed into AR devices. So an AR system can actually learn about a space over time and how it changes. And that can be incorporated into XR and mixed reality experiences, right? And in ways that are just really exciting, right? You could say, show me all my children's birthdays over the last 10 years in the space right here and now. And you can see that's where a lot of the players are going, right? So one example is I think it's the new iPhone 12 or is it the iPad Pro has the LiDAR scanner. It has the poor man's LiDAR scanner in there, right? That is, think about that for a second. What is that doing, right? What is their ultimate goal? If you can think about like sort of like a little bit one level down. Well, I know Apple doesn't collect your data, so that's reassuring, but other devices do, and there's going to be lots of other LiDAR and photogrammetry based capture systems on the market. So for your listeners, photogrammetry is an amalgamation of two or more photographs that creates a 3D model. So, a lot of folks are probably familiar with it when they go to Zillow or a real estate site, and there's a Matterport scan of a house, and they can kind of like have a dollhouse view and kind of walk through. Yep. Matterport has, they've got some patents on some of their versions of photogrammetry, right? But I mean, there's going to be these devices will be enabled with this capture technology in the very, very near future. I mean, some of it's already right now. So imagine the historical data and what we can do with the ability to capture 3D content of our home and walking around it. And also, what is that? How does that fit into an AI system? And then also videogrammetry. Videogrammetry is super exciting. There's all different forms of it. There's Paul Devebic. I don't know if you should definitely have him on your podcast. He works at Google now, and he's really kind of pioneering in the Lightfield capture technology, which is it's a little bit above my pay grade, but the current version of it is an arc, like a C-shaped arc with GoPros on it, and it spins around. The arc spins around, so it creates kind of a giant circle, and it's creating a light field capture where effectively it's capturing every point of light from a single space within that sphere. So when you put that VR headset on, what you're not only capturing 3D space, but you're actually capturing the light data of how it came through when you were over here to the left. So that that what that does is it captures like iridescence, like on a peacock, or refractions on a surface, how they change when you move your eyes. And it's capturing the real refractions, the real dispersion of light that was really there in that moment in time, which is many levels beyond what we have with 3D renderers or in Pixar, where we try to recreate those realities. But I'm personally, I think you asked maybe earlier in the podcast what I'm passionate about. And what I'm most passionate about is the miracle and the miraculous data and visual existence of the world as we have it. Not the recreation of the world, which is also a whole lot of fun. But for instance, I'll just give you a couple examples. There's a company called Macroscopic Solutions, right? I think they're in Boston. They've created a macroscopic camera system that can move around an object the size of like something that's on the size of the head of a pin, and it moves around it and captures a photogrammetry capture of a little tiny minuscule little object. And then it creates a 3D module, hyper-resolution 3D model of that object, which you can move around in VR. That object really exists, right? But we didn't really have the ability to interact it and experience it until now, until these systems evolve. And it's the same thing with everything that we do at Panogs. I mean, we're always figuring out what is the next imaging visual capture system that's just going to blow our socks off, right? Like, there's all sorts of crazy things that exist in the world that we can't see right now, unless, for instance, you put a stereoscopic night vision camera on a drone and fly it down in a crevasse that's inaccessible from a human. We've got the Mars rovers, but there's a wealth of amazing things to see and experience on our world. And the biological diversity, the geographical diversity is so incredible. And you could just go out your backyard with a macroscopic camera system to see it. It's all around us. So we try to kind of, as the world is becoming more and more online, we try to, one of our missions at Panogs is to sort of like remind people that there's actually this amazing world out there still to be experienced, and bring it to them. And that's always sort of been a photographer's mission, right? So Panogs actually stands for Panoramic Photographers. And that's kind of where our core evolution, came from. But we shorten it to the panographers, but we got a lot of slack when we would tell people that we were the panographers. We thought we were in a different type of film industry. So we shortened it a little bit to Panogs. Yeah, the panographers. And and also the domain name was available, so that's a big plus.
Very important, extremely important nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean Netflix, right? That's why they chose that name. It was the domain was available.
You were talking about this sort of like the time travel thing, and that's something that we were talking about at Yahoo. Is like we had this concept called time and space radio, where you could basically turn a dial to a time and space, a time and place, and just like re-experience that time and space. And you can imagine doing the same thing with your application, right? Where you could say, oh, I want to experience like LA in 1980 or this street corner, and you could just like suddenly you're there. It's like with all these other pieces, it's kind of like the holodeck is practically here. We just need
absolutely
to do that better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's three things I wanted to say to that. Which one is, because I've been in VR, I've had these 360 VR camera systems so early. I mean, I originally had the Freedom 360 rigs, which they're just holders. You stick 6 GoPros in them. I think we had those in 2013 or maybe even earlier than that. And I've got 2 young children now, but when I had these VR camera systems, they were just toddlers. And now I can put my VR headset on and watch my little kids walking around me. It's like there's a visceral memory that I can experience or re-experience, which is just amazing. There's also this camera system called the Kandao Obsidian, and it works with other VR camera systems. But what it does is it captures stereoscopic 360 video while simultaneously capturing depth maps, or 6DOF, 6TOF, right? And everybody's familiar with this if they've got the Facebook app and they've got an iPhone that's got multiple cameras on it. And it does it as well. And you can turn a photo into 3D, right? Mm-hmm. So you can move it around. It kind of looks like there's a person in the foreground and there's a background that moves. Yep. So effectively what this camera does is it captures a 360-degree equirectilinear depth map, and then it overlays that into the 360 video. And what that gives you the ability to do, just like the Lightfield captures, is you can walk around the room for a few feet. It gives you a limited amount of movement. So you're watching this 360 video family album of your children when they were little, and they're walking around you, and you can walk around them a little bit. You can actually move, and they really feel like they're there. And this is now, right? So there's the historical capture possibilities for this is just it's already amazing. And I use this thing called Pseudoscience Viewer, and it's really what's really fun about that is, and this blew my mind when I first experienced it. You can capture your office space and have someone walking around in it, and then in Pseudoscience VR Viewer, you can change the scale. So you can shrink your office down so it's like this tiny little dollhouse, this little miniature version of your studio. And then you can stick your head in it and you can see your little ant size or like little, 1-inch version of you walking around. I mean, it's such a strange experience.
I love it.
And that's technology that exists now. But I mean, there's, with videogrammetry, videogrammetry is really interesting. It's like Matterport on steroids, where it's capturing enough photographic data every second that it can create a 3D model that actually is like linear based, just like a film, where you can fast forward and rewind the 3D space. And I saw this Japanese artist, his name escapes me, but I can send it to you if you put it in your show notes, where he basically he used the new iPhone to videogrammetry himself playing a guitar in his studio, and then he videogrammetried his self playing the piano and then singing, right? And then what he did was he superimposed all 3D models into the same experience. So you put on your VR headset and you can walk around in studio, and it's all 3 of him playing a song that he choreographed, and it's all of him.
Wow.
And that's now. I mean, that's right now. you know?
Well, see, like we need to do is record ourselves, so when our kids get older, they can sit down in front of dad and go, listen to us
Yeah.
talk our stories, even if we're no longer around, right?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the, I mean, not to get morbid here, but another piece that we have in beta right now with our partner up in Seattle, Mixed Reality, is we've created it's a obituary XR app, and it's in beta right now. So we're just in the stages because we just don't know if it's a sensitive topic, and we don't know if it's something that is going to really be considered insulting, or I think we'll get there. But the idea is that you can walk to a place, to like your graveyard of a family one, and they would pre-record a 3D holographic scan of themselves telling you something, right? And it could be specific to you, or it could be more general. I mean, the possibilities are unlimited, but the idea would be virtual, and it's like geotagged. It's sort of like Pokemon Go. It's like that, but it's a geotagged obituary experience, so that it can be attached to a place where your loved one liked to travel to. So you actually, and the idea is to encourage people to actually physically go to these places, that you have to go to the place to experience it. Just like Pokemon Go, you have to travel, and you have to, exhaustively hike up to the mountain that your father loved to visit. And then there's a message waiting for you there. That is so fun. And I mean, connecting the real world. Yeah, another shout out to the Supernatural team. I don't know. Are you familiar with the Supernatural workout?
No.
Okay, so on the Oculus headsets, VR headsets, what they've done is they've created photogrammetry scans of some of the most beautiful places on the planet. And what you do is you work out in the most beautiful places in the world, like on top of a volcano in Iceland, in New Zealand, in the Sahara Desert, but they're very realistic places. And they add effects so that the water and the river and the mountains and the clouds, and there's dynamic effects. And then it's a lot like Beat Saber, where you have dynamic body movements that you end up discovering that you're doing as you try to samurai slice these objects that come at you. And it's hooked, and you can attach your smartwatch, your Apple Watch, and when the pandemic first hit, it saved my life. I mean, in the sense that I would have become a lump on a log, and I've been doing an hour workout every day, and my Apple Watch told me that when I first started doing it, my BPM got to some scary levels. It was like almost 200 for a sustained amount of time, like cardiac arrest levels.
When I go hiking.
Yeah, and now I can't get it. Even when I do the ultra hard level, I can't get it above like 150.
Nice.
So I have to give them credit for my cardio health has really improved with the VR headset, and with their program. So my point I think I was trying to make was just that there's possibilities that we haven't even envisioned yet, right? Like there's please stop me if I'm talking too much, by the way. I want to make sure you get a word in, since you're the host.
We're go into the future now anyway, so let's talk about the future. You're already there, some of the stuff you were talking about. But 2031, where are you going to be in 2031? What can we do? Like, will a holodeck finally be here in 2031, or is that still further out?
Well, that's a great question. I think that's so far out in the future that I think it's hard for me to imagine how insanely amazing it will be. But it will be amazing. I can tell you with confidence in 10 years that we're going to have the holodeck will exist. I mean, it sort of already exists. If you think about what the pandemic has done, it's accelerated all these technologies. There's a resurgence of resources. I'm on the board of directors for an organization called the IVRPA, and it's very old. It's one of the, I think it might be the oldest VR based organization still in existence. So
was it started by John Lanier?
No, but it was originally called the QT VR PA, I think it was, which was, if you remember, Apple had the QuickTime player. Remember that?
Yeah. I remember,
and there was the
QuickTime VR.
Yeah. So that's its origins.
Wow.
But what the point I was getting to was that the mission of the organization, which is now called the IVRPA, which is the International Virtual Reality Professionals Association, and we're considering changing it to IXRPA, but we'll see about that. But what it does is we bring in the sort of the groundbreaking people in our industry, right? So just like your Think Future podcast, we're always kind of tapping into, hey, what is the next great thing? What is this next innovative thing? So we kind of look under the hood at things that are still in beta, or things that are just kind of hitting the market, but maybe the market hasn't fully realized exists yet. So I can say in confidence, right now we've got, I'll tell you what we have right now, and maybe that will answer your question about what we think will be in the near future and the longer term future, which is, have you seen the Looking Glass holographic displays?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so the Looking Glass holographic displays they keep on releasing them bigger versions and thinner versions, but what the idea is it's like a black box, it's like a mirror, and it's a screen that has depth. So it's like you're looking into something that would be as close as to your face and all the way into infinity. So you can walk around, you can look, and they connected it to the Magic Leap hand tracking device, which is this little scanners that create virtual hands for yourself, and you can actually move objects around in this holographic viewer.
Wow!
And they've taken it a step further, and they've used the Intel and Microsoft has the Kinect. It's sort of like a hybrid. Their listeners can correct me on this. It's sort of like it's a depth camera. Mm-hmm. And so what you can do now is you can hook up the depth camera, and if someone else, like if you have the same setup as I am, you and I would both be transmitting a holographic projection of our heads to each other.
Oh, fantastic!
In live time. And so that already exists right now. And now there's another company that just came out with an iPad version of this. It's called the LumePad, LUMEPAD. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they're taking it a step further, and they put the depth camera on the back of their LumePad, with the idea that you would go out and you would take pictures of these depth images, and then have holographic. You could show your holographic photo album to your friends, or share your holographic images with your friends that have the holographic viewers on their end as well. And so so with those current technologies that already exist, let's just jump ahead 6 months and say, well, when processors and processing power on these devices and more resources get put into these devices, eventually they're going to be videogrammetry based holographic projections where they can record, spatially, basically depth video with spatial dimensions, spatiality. And then, it's the same thing. If you follow the course of the evolution of the iPhone, it's, we go from, remember when I think 4K was introduced to the iPhone, everyone got really excited and it was like, ooh, ah. So it'll be the same with these devices. They'll keep on adding more and more, depth, more clarity to the 3D scans. The depth cameras will get better. And so you'll be able to share, we'll be able to do live feed, like super realistic, holographic communications. These things already exist. So in 10 years, I think what we'll have probably will be, and you see these devices already starting in the pandemic, all these workout exercise mirrors. I think that in 10 years, we'll have wall size holographic displays that can open up, basically will be a window into your family member who might live across the country or on the other side of the world. And it will look like you're just looking right into their room.
Well, so I'm going to say when they actually put those in homes, it's like there's a hollow room, right? There's
exactly.
fully fully immersive, and you just walk in, and you can connect yourself with anywhere. And travel, can you imagine the travel industry? Of course, we could go on for hours.
Well, yeah. So I mean, one of the things that I was going to mention was for the IVRPA, we're actually we had to cancel last year's conference. So it's this amazing conference where the most talented engineers and scientists and photographers and panographers get together and kind of help push the industry forward. And so we had to, it was super devastating last year to have to cancel the conference because of the pandemic, and everyone's been scrambling. Everyone's on the same boat. How are we going to get all these people together? And so we've been doing months and months and months of research on trying to find a virtual online platform that can be viewed on desktops, but also in VR headsets, but can also has the ability to show 360 videos, not just standard videos, and 360 images. And so in some ways, we're kind of there. We're kind of in the holographic world because we've got, I mean, like my son, he's off doing, Roblox virtual worlds. And there's actually a Roblox VR viewer, and there's called, VR Craft. I let him build his worlds in the VR version of Minecraft. So my son is already, with all his friends, they're already building these virtual worlds, and they're so good at it already. He's only 9, and he's so good at these things. And then, so we've been investigating, like there's VR chat, there's Verbella, there's AltSpace VR, which Microsoft, purchased. There's Hubs by Mozilla. We found one, which is an offshoot of Verbella called FrameVR.io. We're very excited about this one because it has a lot of it's in beta right now, but it has some really interesting paradigms that I hadn't considered before, that I won't go into now, but are very exciting. It kind of opened up my mind to how maybe the virtual world. So one of the things about pushing technologies and innovation is that, like a snake skin, it's kind of hard to shed old paradigms and embrace something new that might be more effective. And so what we've noticed in our research is that you've got all these companies that are like Verbella. I want to say it's either Verbella or maybe it was Engage.
I'm actually taking some classes in Verbella for my Stanford program.
Oh, very cool. Well, you know about it then. So if let's say you're a CES or you're SIGGRAPH or you're a big conference, and let's say you want to have maybe, I don't know, 20,000 attendees, or let's just say 250 attendees. And there's no way to have all those people in this virtual world yet at high resolution, right? And if there is, you're going to have to buy a server farm or rent a server farm that takes up an entire building, right? So they've found ways around this, and some of these platforms are more robust than others. But if you're a big organization and you want to have your conference and you want to have it at this really high quality experience, you have to pay, right? And I think, it's quite expensive. I mean, for an organization, I think it's between, some of these larger virtual conferences can cost $20,000 for a day.
Oh yeah.
And the more users you have, the more, because it's not a game, some of these online gaming worlds kind of offset the costs by, because you have a subscription and there's other modalities of payment that they've got baked in. But the point I'm trying to make is that the pandemic has accelerated all these things. And now it's like this wonderful wild, wild west where you've got all these virtual online developers building these really cool platforms. I mean, we've seen ones. Oh God, what's the one? I can't think of the name. It's got the word bark in it or dogs in it or something. But what I love about it is that you use your phone, and it scans your face, and then it auto generates your avatar. It's for smaller meetings so that you don't have to go through that whole avatar setup.
Oh, I love that.
And then
to improve the avatar setup.
Yeah, no, it's instant. It's just like, boom, you're in there, and
why can't I just take a picture of my face and slap it on the front of that avatar?
Exactly. Yeah. And then my favorite of all of them, though, which I think is just such a beautiful experience, is it's called the Museum of Other Realities. Have you seen that one? And that one is on Steam VR. You can experience it on almost any VR headset. It's best on a high-end PC that's got like on the Pimax. If you have a Pimax VR headset and you want to have just an amazing experience, and what they've done is they've got this. You go in their world and they've got this avatar auto generator, and it's got all these huge like knobs and like dials and like things that you pull, and you auto, and depending on what you turn and twist, you create these beautiful abstract shapes that float in the air.
Nice.
So you effectively create a beautiful work of art, which then is representing your form. That's
exactly where we need to go. We have to stop thinking about replicating reality. We have to do better than reality.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and what it is it's this incredibly beautiful museum. It's like the Guggenheim or like a Frank Lloyd Wright building. It's just this beautiful building, and they have artist residencies where they get famous CG animators and artists to have an exhibition for a month. So it's recreating what we have in real museums, and it's got that sort of time-based modality where you've got a month to go experience the artwork, but when the exhibition ends, it ends. Yeah. And I think that's really beautiful. And there's interactions and interactivities that exist in that museum that couldn't occur in the real world. And there's experiences you can have that are just they're so phenomenal in so many ways. It's just what these tools have opened up for artists. It's just so exciting. I mean, Google just open sourced Tilt Brush. Mm-hmm. And are you guys, as I'm sure your audience is probably familiar with Tilt Brush, is this beautiful virtual painting program. So they open sourced it, and immediately this artist took it and connected it to an AR headset. So basically what you do is you have a pass through of your room around you, but then you can go and you can paint on everything. With animated, and those objects stay where they are in 3D space. And so, we try as artists and as filmmakers, we try to basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to push, you're like, it's just like the Impressionist painters, right? It's like you walk in a museum and you see something, you experience something you've never experienced before. And maybe there are things that you can't experience. We've done a lot of work in Seattle in elderly homes where, we took them on a trip to summit Mount Everest. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, there's the things that people, even reasonably fit people, have a hard time doing, right? I mean, it's like, so, but the point being is that it's the expansion. We're just trying to expand the human mind, and I think that these tools are really they're opening up our creative potential, and they're just sort of expanding the mind to a place, hopefully that will improve the world, right? And not just have people stuck in these virtual worlds, and totally happy staying in there and avoiding the world. We want to encourage, active participation in the real world as well. Yeah,
that's why I'm like, as long as we can do better, that's always been the thing with me, is like this remote stuff that's going on. People are always trying to get back to face-to-face, back to reality, back to the way we were before. But I'm thinking that's too limiting. We have to go beyond that. We have to go get better than, like, what can we do with these interfaces to improve upon reality, right? I'm not just going to be, if I'm in VR, I'm not just going to be sitting at a representation on my desk. I want to be like floating through space, or I'm going to be on a planet, or I want to be, in Santorini or something like that. I'm not going to be in reality. I'm going to be in a place that's better than reality. And it sounds like we're heading in that direction. So that's awesome. And we've gone way over time, but that's okay, because it's a podcast and we can go as long as we like. So
absolutely.
What's the best way to do it? I'll put your LinkedIn profile and all that stuff in the show notes, but anything else you want to add contact wise?
Sure. Yeah. The best way to find us is just on our website, which is just panogs.com. Mm-hmm. And, we're on all the socials just under Panogs or Panogs LLC. And you can, we've got a contact form right on, on our website, but but obviously you can find us at pretty much anywhere.
Awesome.
And I would just say, what I would recommend is, if you're interested in virtual reality, is make the leap, get yourself a virtual reality headset. Obviously the Oculus, the Quest 2 is really sort of a no-brainer just because of the price point and the kind of capabilities that it offers right out of the box. I would invite people to check out timelife.com and check out our Capturing Everest film. We've done a lot of really cool cinematic VR experiences that are just so much fun, like hang gliding over the Yosemite. And so I would say look us up and just, check out some of our work. And, if you're interested in the space, I would also encourage folks to check out, it's IVRPA of IVRPA.org. And we're, the nonprofit virtual reality organization, probably the longest running and the oldest virtual reality organization that exists. And we've got just incredible folks on there. I could go on and on, right? But I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and I'm happy to come back anytime and talk more about the future.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much. A great conversation. I'll put all your information in the show notes as well, so people get in touch with you. But this has been great. Thank you so much. And now I have a long shopping list of stuff I need to buy. So
yeah, it never ends, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hope to talk to you again soon sometime. Okay.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.